Oh, we're live. Hello. Hi. Hey, what's up?
Hi.
I was waiting to say hello. How are you, David? How are you doing?
I'm well. How was your run?
Delicious. Actually, the food I just ate was delicious, but the run was pretty good. I ran with one of one of our faculty members who's really nuts about barefoot running. It was my first try. I brought the kids out. It was like 3 miles, and my feet are just torn to shreds. But whatever. It was okay.
Well, good times, good times. How was your adjustment to daylight savings?
It pretty much just happened at noon, which I think, why isn't that when it goes off?
Yeah, why in the middle of the night? That seems like the worst time to have it
I know,
happen.
because everybody, like human nature in general, is chronically underslept. Like in general, we have sleep deprivation symptoms at all times, and it's one of the reasons why caffeine is so popular. So why? Once a year, do you just fuck over your populace? It's just weird. I love how Arizona just goes, nope,
Not doing it.
not doing that. Not doing that thing. And they're like the one state that does. I lived there for a little while, and I remember like you were like, oh, daylight savings time. And I was like, what time is it there again? Wait, is this pre or post? Wait, what time? Sometimes you were 2 hours different. Sometimes you were 1 hour different.
Yeah, I've actually been reading the justifications for that. So Arizona does it because it's so goddamn hot during the day that one extra hour of daylight would just nuke them. There would be no time to do anything. Like if the sun's out till 9 p.m., they just can't go outside all day. So it's like it gives them a little bit of time to barbecue or do whatever they want to do outside when the sun goes down, that precious, precious time while everyone else is enjoying the sun. And having been in Arizona in the summer, you and I both know like it's just hell on earth. It's a hellscape.
I guess. I mean, it's a lot better than here. Imagine that, but with 99% humidity.
Yeah, that's true. It's just a very arid, scorching 112 degrees there in the summer, and I didn't quite enjoy being outside when the sun was out. But the reason the rest of us do it, it actually saves a lot of money. Well, goes back to farming times, but the modern justification to keep doing it is it saves a lot of money on energy costs because we turn our lights on less often when there's more natural light.
Oh, I'll be damned. They're so weird. Or either they're weird or we're weird, and we need to just get our shit together.
Yeah. But to celebrate daylight savings, I thought we could talk about farming for an episode.
Oh, that makes sense because you just said it came from farming traditions, right?
Yes, having extra daylight to get the crops in during the prime farming season.
Huh. Which makes sense because there's this new hotness. We talked about it last time. What's it called again? I'm pulling it up.
Stardew Valley.
Stardew Valley, yeah.
So we thought we could do a episode about farming simulators, Stardew Valley, and especially the franchise that it ripped off everything from Harvest Moon.
Yeah, and we've referenced Harvest Moon a lot in the sense of this and Ogre Battle and a couple other games that you watch and you're like, that game looks awful. And you start playing it and you're like, oh my God, I love this game. And not even love it. It's not that you love it. This isn't one of these games that you are proud of. If somebody's like, how'd you spend your entire weekend? And you go, you mean all 48 hours? We're like, yeah. And you're like, well, I squeezed in 4 hours of sleep. And I did something else. You don't even want to bring it up. You don't want to say
I don't know. I masturbated for like 40 hours. That's all I did. Yeah. And that's less embarrassing than what you actually did, which is you played Harvest Moon.
You're like, wow, it's really shameful. And you're like, I know. It could be worse, though. And you're like, I don't think so. And you're like, it could.
It could. Trust me. Yeah. It's what you think. It's the thing you think it is, though. It's not the worst thing that I think in my head right now.
Yeah, it could be worse. Oh, man. Yeah. I've spent... when I was younger and during undergrad where you literally had nothing to do on the weekends, nothing. There's just nothing to do. I was like, well, fuck it. And I would just play like Harvest Moon or Ogre Battle all day for 2 days straight. I didn't care. And then you see me on Sunday and like, oh man, I always felt bad because sometimes we live in the dorm. Well, you know this. You lived with me. I live in the dorms. You're just like a greasy fuck on Sunday.
Yeah.
And then like someone brings someone in and you're like, what are you doing, bro? You got to warn us. Like, if you know we've been in all day.
You can't bring people here to see us in this shape that we're in right now.
I know, they just
this condition, this Harvest Moon condition that we're in.
We don't even bother turning on the lights all day, and so they just come in and we're just like, sweat dripping off our face.
Just like scuttle away like cockroaches.
There's like little bits of food on our faces.
little cheesy poofs.
You just pass out in your chair, and when you wake up, you're like, oh my God, turn it back on. Let's go play some more farming simulators.
And it's like, da, 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 da. And you're like, yeah, get the water, the tomatoes.
Oh man, but for some reason I look I cast shame upon Farmville. I don't know why, besides other than it's like one of these games that keeps bugging me.
It's because of the, well, we'll talk about that, but I think it's because of the core mechanic is a pay to play where you have to annoy people or buy gems to continue playing.
Yeah, and
whereas Harvest Moon is just like you get to play as much as you want, have fun, man.
Yeah,
you don't have to wait 42 hours to water those crops again. They're ready to go.
Oh, it's one of the coolest things. So how do you want to start this topic off?
Well, I thought I'd start with a little bit of research I did about where this franchise came from, because when you think about it, it's weird. It's a weird game to come out, especially as old as it was, right? Like the Super Nintendo Harvest Moon.
Well, but it's from Japan, right? Which kind of makes you go, oh, okay, no matter what it is, right?
Yeah, Japan has some interesting things culturally. We were just watching a festival.
What is it? What's it about, David?
All right, let me take you back in time for a minute. To the Edo period of Japan, about 400 years ago, there was a woman in this village, and she had a problem. Every time her husband would have sex with her, which I guess just one time really is the first hole in this myth, but every time he would try to have relations with her, there was a demon that lived in her lady parts that would chomp off his genitals, which
I hate that.
Yeah, so he would no longer have one. She would castrate all of her lovers because of this toothy little demon, this little vagina demon that lived inside of her. And so a blacksmith in the village created for her a steel phallus that she inserted into herself, and the demon broke all of his teeth off and then fled. And then she married the blacksmith and lived happily ever after. But to commemorate this ingenuity of phallic smithery, they celebrate a festival to this day, and it's called the Penis Festival. But that's just because that's how they pronounce penis.
Yeah. So you sent me this YouTube link.
Called Kanamari Matsuri is the Japanese.
Oh, well, all I know is I clicked on it.
Festival of the Steel Phallus.
It's in Kawasaki, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so you click on this video, and it's just like, here's Kawasaki in Japan. And then all of a sudden, the next picture is like these girls just cramming like popsicle penises in their mouth, and they're going, "Penis! I love penis!" The weirdest thing you've ever watched. Well, not the weirdest thing, but one of the weirdest things you ever watched.
So from the country that brought us the Festival of the Steel Phallus comes Harvest Moon, a much tamer series of festivals.
Yeah, and it's the art on it looks like looks sort of like a Chrono Trigger almost.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
It's from 1996, so this is kind of early on the Super Nintendo run. This game comes out, and it's actually really interesting. The guy who kind of dreamed it up, his name is Yasuhiro Wada, and his inspiration was when I was in the city, I started reminiscing about what was good about where I came from. So he moved to Tokyo to pursue his developmental careers in games, and started thinking about where he grew up in the country. So he's from what made the countryside so special. That's where some of the key concepts for Harvest Moon came from. So he shows up, and he's kind of nostalgic. You know how when you move to a big city from a small town, like, I don't know, Mountain Home, Arkansas, and you start wondering, like, man, I kind of miss some stuff about home. Even if it wasn't that great, you start to rose-tinted glasses the past a little bit.
Right.
And so he's like, country life, what was so great about it? And he decides to make a game about it. And the art style was actually inspired by The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. So that same kind of overhead, swing your sword, cut grass looking animations.
Well, it looks a lot like it.
Yeah, it came out Legend of Zelda. But there's also a Famicom game called Derby Stallion, where you would basically raise horses and then race them. And that was the game. And so he wanted to be like a ranch simulator with a side story of growing crops. And the idea was to make the crops grow, and then you could get a bigger farm because you could use that cash to expand, And that inspiration came from SimCity, which is another game you like to play a lot. But
I definitely see that. Go ahead. Sorry, I was going to say, I definitely see that inspiration from. It looks a lot like Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past.
Yeah,
that even leaves those little
Super Nintendo one. Yeah, the little leaves that would float around.
Yeah.
But there was a problem, because as he was making it, the first problem, like, the company's president went missing, and the company started falling apart. They just were doing too many projects. They'd overextended. The CEO's just MIA. And so they were going to cancel it, but then they finally decided, like, okay, we're not going to cancel it, but we're going to bring the design team down to 2 people instead of 10. So it's like one guy doing the art and the other guy doing programming, and then they both work together to design the gameplay. And they had to scrap a lot of things, which he later brought back in the N64 Harvest Moon, which was the like definitive edition for him. It's like everything he originally wanted to be in the Super Nintendo. But the first problem he came up to was, would a game where the player performs tasks that are considered hard labor in the real world be any fun at all? And I have a quote from him. He says, when attention is running high at all times, you get tired pretty easily. And on the flip side, it can be boring if everything is presented in a calm and composed manner. If we were to carefully craft a cycle in which you work diligently with a nice payoff or reward, the player would feel good. Now, that's just a game designer sort of just making things up, but does that hold true psychologically?
Oh, I was talking about like things that are simple or things that are like ridiculously fast-paced.
Yeah, so he's trying to reach a balance between like high intensity, fast paced gaming and then simple, monotonous gaming, but cycled in with rewards every so often when you do it.
Well, what he's talking about, okay, so things that drive people's behaviors. A lot of people, this is something I see in game design in general, and I keep, every time I see it, I wince, I cringe a little. But they say, because social psychology sometimes talk about this, but intrinsic versus extrinsic motivators. Have you heard about that?
Intrinsic versus extrinsic motivators. So
Yeah.
like why you're actually doing something? Like, is it something that you want to do because you consider yourself a completionist, or is it something that you want to do because it's going to unlock an achievement?
Kind of, yeah, a lot like that. And that's exactly my point, is it's hard to draw an exact line, because anytime, so they'll give a clear example, like, well, here, you've got this, you get, if you play the game long enough, you get money, right? They'll make it something real simple like that. And you're like, okay, well, extrinsic motivator. I mean, it's something that you receive tangibly on the outside for doing that behavior. Intrinsic, this is the part where I'm like, well, okay, the intrinsic, they say you do it for some internal reason, right? And they do some magical hand waving. I'm like, what does that mean? And they're like, well, they just want to do it. And I'm like, but why? And they're like, just because they want to. And I'm like, but why do they want to do it? And they can never answer past that question, pretty much. I mean, they do, but whenever Socratic question, we'll break it down. So here, what he needs to do is he needs to look at this intrinsic motivation, I think, to make both of those more tangible. You can make people do the most ridiculous things for hours. We have people come into the lab and do, oh yeah, here we're telling you how to be a sociopath. But people come into the lab and like one of the things is literally tying and untying shoes for 1 hour, and we get people to do it reliably because we understand like human behavior. But one of the things is this: you extrinsically motivate, of course you do, but you make them think it's intrinsic. So if you give them a value basically, or you could say something like this, like, well, we found that psychopaths quit tying and untying shoes after 45 minutes, but normal people do it for an hour. And even if someone wants to quit, they're like, fuck, and they're in a room full of people, they're not gonna, they're much less likely to do that. And then is that intrinsic or is it extrinsic? Because everyone's around you is really what's driving your behavior.
Yeah.
If they weren't there, you probably would stop and just kind of wait if you didn't think you were being filmed. But
yeah, I don't know. It feels like everything's extrinsic.
It is. That's the dumb part. or it's some kind of values-based thing, right? Like
right.
Which isn't really intrinsic. It is extrinsic, because even when they go, oh, it's because I want to be a good person, and I'm like, that's why I helped that old lady across the street. And then I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, but what does that do for you? Like, nothing. Just makes you feel good. And I'm like, that's it then? If you were the only person in the world and it was just you and that old lady, you'd get up out of your bed, walk all the way over there, and you're like, that old lady needs to get across there. You'd walk 12 miles across town, help her across, and then walk 12 miles back, and you do this 6 times a day. And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, okay, so there's a point that it reaches where it's just too aversive. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, what about all this talk you were saying about being super nice? You're a nice person. Oh, as it turns out, we've tested that. And no, people, if they have the time, many people do things, and then they attribute it to the fact that they're a good person. But, yeah, you've heard of it. We already talked about the preacher one.
Right.
Where, yeah. So anyway, the thing here is, I think it's all extrinsic. And if he quite understood a little bit better, I think he could manipulate that. But yeah, go ahead.
So it was, I think he manipulated plenty, because this game was ridiculously hard. Just whatever he happened onto is working. He originally called it Jinsei Bokuju, which is Life Farm, but then changed it to that when the studio looked at it, they're like, Life Farm is the dumbest name we've ever seen. So they named it Bokuju Monogatari, which is Farm Story. And that when they shipped it to America, Natsumi was like, yeah, let's do a Harvest Moon, because a Harvest Moon, do you know what a Harvest Moon is?
Isn't it that big, like, yellow moon?
Yeah, it's like the last full moon before the fall equinox.
Hmm.
And it's so huge in the sky that the reason they call it harvest moon is because farmers can just harvest on into the night by the light of that moon, so they can get a huge harvest in that night.
Hmm.
Which is, if you've played Harvest Moon, okay, so let's talk a little bit about the gameplay of Harvest Moon for people who haven't played any of the franchise. There's dozens of games in this series by now. But my experience, just to go into it, I played the Super Nintendo one and I played the N64 one a lot, and that's kind of my experience with the franchise. I haven't really gone into it much in the more recent ones. What about you?
That's the exact same. I played one on the GameCube. Did you see that one? The first one that came out?
Yeah, I didn't play it, but I thought it came out.
It's called like a something life story or something like that.
Yeah,
It was
New Life Story.
something like that. Yeah, it was the subtitle, and it was they strayed too far. I think it was a lot of like walking around town. Like your farm is like on a row of farms, and people are too close. I think because you have to do all this crap before. It just really defocused the farming part of it, which for some reason, and I've never said this before, the farming's what made it fun.
Right. In fact, it was kind of nice having your farm away from the village, so you could just be a hermit and sow your potatoes. You can go into town if you want, but not really.
Sometimes you'd be like, oh shit, I gotta go do that thing in town. Oh man, but my potatoes. Yeah, fine, I'll do it. Like,
So the way Harvest Moon tends to go is you inherit a farm from like a relative or something. You go in, it's all just in shambles, and you just fix it up. You chop wood, you break rocks, you build fences, and then you go and you buy some seeds and some farming equipment, and you sow some seeds, and you have a pretty modest crop. But with the profits from that, you can plant more seeds the next time, and the seasons change, so you want to get all your tomatoes in the summer before the winter comes, because during the winter you can't do shit except walk around in the mines and the mountains like scavenging. You're just a forager for the winter until you can, but each time you get more money you can add on to your farm. You can build a greenhouse, you can buy livestock, so it's just this incrementally growing farm as you work.
yeah,
And yeah.
And if it rains, you're like, shit, I gotta go inside. I'm gonna get a cold soon. If I get a cold, I won't be able to
rainy
farm
days
all.
were my favorite. I've never learned to love the rain as much as I was in Harvest Moon, because you have to water that day. It took care of that. It freed up the whole day. You could go in town. You could talk to people you hadn't seen in like, it's July. It hasn't rained in 3 weeks. Hey Karen, how you doing?
I know.
I brought you some berries. Just give her some berries. Harvest Moon had a court, by the way. There's a courtship mini game in each Harvest Moon.
But don't do it like that. Because you like bring them, you're like, I brought you some potatoes, and like, I haven't seen you in like a month. You're like, yeah, well, it's raining, that's why I'm here.
And I brought you some berries. You're the only girl I'm courting because you work at the bar at night when when my harvest is already in.
Yeah.
So what's up, Karen? She's like, I'm fine. My family's an alcoholic. My dad's beating my mom. It's pretty sad at home, broken story. Here's some berries. I'll see you this time tomorrow, and I'll bring you some more berries, and I'll keep doing that till you marry me.
And she's like pretty heavy-handed about it. She's like, I wish I had someone, who worked with their hands, who was really strong, who could stand up to my dad. You're like, yeah, that sounds very nice. Here, have some more berries. Like, it's like, wow.
And there were clear red flags. Like, you'd go in and she'd have the little crazy swirly eyes, like she'd been like Japanese anime eyes for being drunk. Yeah. She's like, yeah, I'm just drowning out my sorrows. It really sucks being home. I don't think I'm going home tonight. I'm like, yeah, I got some berries. See you, Karen.
Yeah, what a hot mess. And how would you feel if like you're dating someone, but they only would come by when it was raining, when they couldn't possibly work?
Yeah,
you're like, I'm glad I could take a clear second.
That's what made her ideal, because Anne, she worked at the ranch, and then like there was a flower shop girl. They all worked during the day, and if you go there, you're gonna miss your harvest for that day. You're not gonna water your plants. They might wither on the vine. Like Karen was the ideal girlfriend in that game. She worked around your farmer schedule.
Yeah. I love it. Marriage of convenience.
Yes.
But, yeah, that's but that game, I think the emphasis, that's the funny thing is, you'd think like love and romance, that's some of the more exciting times in life, like,
yeah, those are extrinsic motivators for most people.
Yeah. And then, but for some reason you feel you begrudgingly go into town. You're like, fuck, I guess today's the festival. Like, gotta go.
It's like a fun harvest festival where everyone dances and there's like a harvest goddess crowned at the festival, and you're like, fuck, I told Karen I'd be your date to that. I guess I can skip watering my plants for one day. I hope they don't wither too much.
And the next day you're just grumbling. You're just like, oh, this stupid sucks.
And it's funny because my brother, who's got like a crazy work ethic, he would hold his little avatar in the game to that same standard. So he would just collapse in the fields at 3 a.m. because he ran out of energy, and there was no energy bar on that one. So he'd just like fall down, and he'd wake up the next day with a little like heat pack on his head, and he's like a thermometer in his mouth, and he's like, I'm like, Josie, you just missed a whole day. You just missed a whole day for that extra 2 hours of harvesting. He's like, well, I work those kind of hours in real life. If my guy can't keep up, that's his fault.
He's soft. He's soft.
He's soft. Got to toughen him up.
Oh, and I love how your sister.
Too.
I love how your sister. So I go in and I see your little sister playing this game, and she's like, oh, here's my farm. And I'm like, wow, you're quite a bit further than I am, and she's been playing for a little longer. And she had a bunch of livestock, and she had just a ton of chickens. And I was like, oh, in this game you can name your livestock, So I called I think I called mine Mr. Moo was my cow, stuff like that. But hers, I walk up and I click on I walk up to the little chicken and it says Buck Buck. And I was like, oh, what an adorable little name, because it's her little sister. And I walk up to another one, and its name is Buck Buck. And I was like, what? And so I walk around 100% of them. I walk around to all 12 of them. They're all named Buck Buck. And so I have to pause the game. I go upstairs and I'm like, Laura, can you explain something to me? So I bring her down. And I'm like, why do you name all these chickens the same thing? Yeah, and she goes, oh, well, the thing is I want to be able to walk outside and go Buck Buck Buck, and they all come. What was her logic? I was like, what are you gonna do when you have kids? She's like, same deal. I was like, oh wow.
Hey, children, clones. Yeah, no, it's a time saver, and that's what's important in this game is you gotta save time.
Yep.
Time is the biggest resource on Harvest Moon, and so the whole time you're trying to find the quickest way to get your chores done, the fastest, most efficient routes to forage, the girls that'll work around your schedule because they're always in the same place at the same time, so you get the stalker-like tendency to know where everyone's going to be at any time of the day and any day of the week.
Yeah.
And then, oh man, it was really creepy. Like they could turn a Harvest Moon into like a serial killer movie, and it would not be that different.
Yeah, exactly.
But what's his worry though was that people would not enjoy doing things that were considered hard labor in real life in a game, and that I feel like that's everyone's initial reaction to it. Like you were like, "Come on, David, you're farming. Like that's stupid. Go mow the yard if you want to do that. That's dumb." So why does it work?
Yeah, it was like the precursor to like Diner Dash,
yeah,
same kind of thing. But, well, okay. So my idea, and I don't know, I've never seen any research on this, but just theoretically, the thing that I think is driving this is it's the same thing that makes it. Have you ever waited tables, David?
I have not, except in Diner Dash. Does that count?
Yeah, pretty much. It's the same sort of thing. So whenever you're playing Diner Dash or waiting real tables, and what's going on in your head? Let's say I snapshot you in the middle of your shift. Bam, you've got something in your hands. What's going on in your head?
So I'm watching the tables. I'm trying to get as many people seated as fast as I can and get as many people out as fast as I can so I can turn over the tables faster, so I can get tips faster, so I can continue.
Yeah, so you just named a lot of things. So you think it would be safe to say you've got like kind of maybe a checklist in your head of things that you need to do in a certain order?
Yeah, while I'm juggling everyone's orders.
Right, so you're like, I need to take that order, and after that, I need to go and wash those dishes, and after that, I need to go get that coffee, and after that, I need to bust that table, right? And then, but if something comes in and inserts itself, it's more immediate. Like I don't know, something starts on fire. You're like, oh, I got to take care of that right now. And so you're constantly shuffling around these things you need to do. But what's cool about it is, it's okay. So anytime we set ourselves to a task and then we do it, and we assign some value to it. Not if you're just like sitting here and I say, all right, touch your mouse, and you touch your mouse, and that's it. That doesn't do anything. But if you assign some meaning to it, then we get a small buzz. Why? Because that's awesome for us evolutionarily, right? We really need to be able to say, if you say, oh man, I need to go pick up that ball or pick up that fruit, I'm just going to gather a bunch of it and put it in in some kind of container and bring it back. There's nothing that is driving that behavior per se without that chemical reaction, right? If you didn't have the chemical reaction, if you went and picked it up and put it in a basket, there's no more likelihood you'd do it again. So you have to have a little buzz of pleasure, right? And so that's what you get. Like you get this little buzz of pleasure when you do something that you assign some sort of meaning to. So the first time you pick up something, let's say it was a spiky looking pine cone thing, and you're like, maybe there's fruit in there, maybe there's not. You put it in your bag or your little basket and you walk it back to your village and it turns out not to be food. Well, that did not send off any kind of buzz in your brain, besides the fact of learning. When you learn is a small one. That's just a small caveat. But it doesn't set off any like reaction in your nucleus accumbens because it's not considered a victory, which is really important. We don't need to be wasting our time picking up these spiky things that turns out aren't food. But if you opened it and it fed the whole village because it had a ton of seeds in it, you'd get an explosion in your head. You'd be like,
bum, 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 bum,
yeah,
bum.
you hold it above your head and it just spins.
Da, 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 da.
What's that called? Leaven bread? Or what's the elven bread?
Oh, lembas.
Lembas bread, yeah. It's like that, like one bite feeds. I mean, you assign this great kind of value to it, right? And that value is a good predictor of how much buzz you're going to get next time you find one. And so what this is anytime you get something that, like in this farming simulator, you've got the same thing. You're like, okay, I'm going to knock out those I'm going to bust up those rocks. Once I do that, I'm going to hoe that garden over there. Once I do that, I'm going to water this stuff, and then I'll be done. And you've got that in your head. And so each one of these, you get a small buzz in your nucleus accumbens. Really, it's just setting off of things that are actually very advantageous to us. But I can't think. The weird thing is, we're really good at contextualizing things as humans, right? Like, I like to, for example, I like to run, but I'm not going to play a game where you run, right? That's not fun to me because it's a contextual thing. I understand that there's no health benefit to that, and I'm not getting the feeling, the pounding of the pavement, kind of feel. So it's just weird that we don't do it here too, like we actually do assign some sort of value to that. Isn't that strange?
Well, one thing that the gameplay does in Harvest Moon that I feel like is helping this is this idea of incremental improvement. So you've got your immediate reward of get the crops in, get that cash payout, right? But then you have an incremental improvement of you'll find a stamina berry that makes it so you can work harder longer. You can upgrade your tools. Like you find little fairies in a cave or little gnomes or whatever, and they upgrade your tools so you can get your chores done faster. So the watering thing will do a 3x3 square instead of one at a time. Or you'll get a greenhouse so you can grow crops in the summer. So these kind of long-term goals happen that make the game more fun for you, but they kind of snowball off each other. Like one thing will lead to the next, will lead to the next. But it all starts from just this like 2 packs of seeds that you're able to buy at the beginning of the game.
Well, that's part of like building meaning too. Like I always say this to people who are in management or businesses, or they have anyone underneath them. There's a great way to do this, and it doesn't come from a quote. I like to use the quote, but I don't have it right now, and I haven't done this in a while, so I kind of forgot. It's been like 2 years since I've talked to someone who's a managerial in the psychological perspective. But there's a quote that says something like, "Don't teach a man to sail." No, don't teach a man to. Have you heard this? To
fish.
To pull the sails and to row or something like that. Instead, teach him the love of the ocean or the love of sailing, basically, right? So, because if you do that, then we assign some kind of meaning to our actions. It has
That's how
value.
I teach high school kids French, right? Instead of being like, verbs are fun, let's conjugate them. We have projects about like, all right, if you were going to travel to Madagascar, what would you need to know? And like get them that love of travel, which would turn into a love of French, which will turn to like, all right, I'm going to learn how to conjugate this verb.
Yeah, and those little bastards are probably taking it for granted because they haven't learned a language from another teacher. So they're just like, oh, this is how you learn language.
Right.
Because I know there's cool things my teachers did back then, and there's shitty things my teachers did, and I didn't know the difference.
Yeah.
Only English like one way or whatever. But yeah, like assigning value, that's kind of what you're doing here. So like whenever you're just hoeing your garden, at first you're like, oh, it sets off that little bitty buzz. You're kind of like, this is kind of fun. I'm just like, I did this thing, and the most important part, this is what's so, I did landscaping for a while, and I know you're no stranger to physical labor whenever you were a kid.
Yeah, my father was a big Puritan in the sense of work will set you free and purify your soul. So Saturdays were often spent planting trees in the neighborhood or, weed eating or whatever you needed doing.
It was the shittiest thing. Like after school, I'd be like, hey, can I come over after school or Saturday or something? And you're like, you can, but he's making me build a pole barn or something ridiculous.
And so you'd come over anyway because you were kind of an asshole. Yeah. And you'd play Ogre Battle or Harvest Moon and look out the window and you'd see me on like a tractor.
Yeah. Or just let you do it. You're like, I gotta pick up sticks in the yard. You can help, and I'm like, nah, it's not my jam.
Gonna come over and play your N64 though. That's like, cool, man.
No, it wasn't quite that bad, but it almost. But anyway, so yeah, your dad was like big on that. So the cool thing is when I did like landscaping, for example, at the end of the day, you can't deny that you have some kind of, if it's your project, like if your parents force you to do it, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But typically, if it's your project, you say, no, this is something I'm going to do. When you finish it, because there's like you can look at it. There's
that visual reinforcer.
Yeah, it's just different. Like it's like at the end, like when I'm working on my dissertation, I do this thing at the end every time. I go and I scroll through all the pages that I've written.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Or I would when I was writing my thesis, I would not double space it, and then right when I feel like I think I'm getting close, I would do the MLA format, so it would go double spaced, and just like scroll through and be like, oh, look at all these pages, because in life there's very few jobs where you get a visual reminder of how far you've come. Like when I'm teaching, I don't get to see like their little intelligence bars fill up and then ding when they reach a new level of knowledge. So there's very few of those kind of visual reinforcers. That's why when I go home in the summer to the state to visit my parents, I'm like, hey, can I mow your yard? I want to mow your yard, because I miss that feeling of just looking over my shoulder and seeing the grass like in those nice rows that I'm making, and then looking forward and seeing what I have yet to do. And you get a very like easy visual cue of like, okay, I'm 70% done with this job and it looks really good.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why there's so many collectors and like hoarders. A lot of times we'll hoard a certain place and they'll go look at it. It's strange. I mean, we it's why collectors, but make such a big deal. They every time they look at it, they're like, whoa, that's something that I did and that can't be taken away from me. Like a lot of things in modern life just isn't like that. So it's the same thing in that game. Like that's kind of what's driving that first behaviors. But then over time you get this, you start assigning it some kind of meaning, right? Because that only lasts so long. Like you're playing and eventually you'd set it down if that's all you had to do. But if there's some end game to it, like you're like, oh, like so you're farming, you start getting this money in, and you're like, I got money. What should I go to? Maybe I can go buy like I don't know, a fence or something. I can't remember exactly, but let's
like a barn for animals. I can start raising animals now.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, okay, and then also you start making more rows of things. And you're like, oh, they're producing fruit. Okay, now I'm gonna go put them in that little bin, and I get even more money, and then pretty soon,
there's like a little min-maxing element too, where you're like, wait a minute, I think I got a slightly higher yield with the potatoes than with the cucumbers. Like, let's try doing potatoes. Oh, I increased my profits 3%, and that 3% feels amazing, even though it's not that noticeable.
Yeah, so behaviorally speaking, and a lot of game designers know this, but they probably don't use the same language, but behaviorally speaking, that's called a secondary reinforcer. Secondary reinforcer is the money in this game, and in real life, it's money as well. But it's something that a primary reinforcer is anything that's just appetitive, right? Appetitive means like, appetite. It means it draws us into it. Mm-hmm. So
makes
food, sex, it's like the 4 Fs, right?
Yeah.
So those things are natural primary reinforcers. Well, secondary reinforcer is something that makes that available. So like if I like delicious food, like most people do, you have to have money to get that, or something else. Like let's say it's bartering, right? Like let's say I'm a skinner in the age of trading. The skins are secondary reinforcers. They don't help me per se. I have my own that keep me warm. Those were primary reinforcers. But anyway, you get the idea.
Ones can be converted into food or sex.
Yes. So to stretch out these contingencies, right, or this behavior, you're going to want to get open access to the secondary reinforcer that opens access to more primary reinforcers, right? It's something you can buy, something that naturally just helps you. Mm-hmm. And here that's exactly what happens. Like you get this money and you're like, well, what am I going to use my money for? It's got to be given to me for something. So you poke around and you're like, oh, this stuff will make my job so much easier, which is hilarious because you're doing this voluntarily. You can make it as easy as you want by quitting.
And your workday doesn't get shorter. You just start being able to do more things as it gets easier. It's not like you're like, now I can water my crops in 2 minutes. I'm going to hang around the rest of the day. No, you just plant more crops, then you can water more plants during the day.
And if I was a game designer, what I would do too is I would take a time where you like maybe once a week, it does like a slow pan through of your farm and everything you own, or something, or show it go up. That's why leveling bars are so important. It gives you a visual cue of how much you've changed.
Yeah, even like a farm report, like a little graph with like a bar graph, and be like, look at your yield this season, it's going up.
Right. Yeah, and then show
line graph
compared to last season's, stuff like that, where you can see the change. Because otherwise, after a while, we're not we are stupid, but some of us aren't stupid, and we say things like, wait a minute, I'm just farming all day. Like no matter how much stuff I'm doing, I'm still just spending the same amount of time. This game sucks. Or in real life, we're like, this sucks, and I feel depressed. I feel hopeless, and I feel like I'm not contributing meaningfully.
And they would add things to it, because once that honeymoon phase ends, and you have to start adding more significance to what you're doing, that's when they were like, oh, by the way, it's time to get married. Oh, by the way, you've got a kid now. Better start thinking about building a crib for him. And so there's always some kind of new reason to keep working. You got to provide for your family, or you want social prestige in the village. So there's a festival coming up, a horse race. You want to have the fastest horse. So you start spending more time doing that. But there's always some kind of wider meaning that you can assign these repetitive tasks. But what's interesting to me is that we don't just, when you get the magic watering can or the magic hoe or whatever, you don't just keep doing the same.
You mean a wife, David? Rude.
Magic wife. Sorry. Hashtag Anita. Hashtag Sarkeesian. But when you get the tools upgraded that make your day go faster, you don't stop doing the same amount of vegetables. You just increase that amount of vegetables, so you're still working the same amount of hours. It seems very human of us to just, like, for example, we live in a modern age now where convenience is supposed to have made our lives a lot simpler, but we still end up working, if not the same amount of hours, more hours. We just find more things to fill the day with.
Oh, I know. Everybody always says this makes this easier. And I'm like, yeah, but we're still going to do something. I mean, like, because let's say email, for example. I don't have to walk by and give office memos and walk them places. Like, the secretaries used to do that kind of thing.
Right.
But now we just email, or we, some businesses have these like little kind of their own, like kind of a Facebook-ish thing, like Quip or something, where you got your own files.
And the volume of emails has gone up. So you're roughly doing the same amount of hours doing correspondence with the office. You're just sending more stuff now.
Yeah, exactly. And now they just increase the frequency of updates rather than saying, "Hand me that report when it's done." They'll say something like, "How's that report going?" through a quick email. And so it's just, and I get so many fucking emails every day, and I just have to go through them and then respond. And I hate how immediacy. Like the big fear of cell phones was that the great convenience was the same. The flip side was the same fear was, well, now everybody will expect me to pick up my phone. And they do. I hate this. I don't pick up my phone sometimes. I see it go off. I'm like, I'm running. And I just turn it off. Or like I'm doing something, like I'm at the store and I'm like, I got stuff in my hands, and I turn it off because it's not convenient for me to take a call. But then people are like, hey, is everything okay? I tried to call you. You didn't pick up. I'm like
yeah. I was doing something else. Didn't have that scheduled in my head. Yeah.
Like if I had encountered you here in real life, then there's a respective time there, right? Like, we ran into each other, and I see you face to face.
I'll let you get back to what you're doing. Have a good day.
Yeah, exactly. But on the phone, like, they don't know that, and to explain that, to be like, oh, hey, I'm gassing on my car, and I've got this thing in my hand. I'm actually in a real hurry. Then it sounds like you're, they're like, oh, is he really? But in real life, you can see it, and I don't know.
The whole idea of like modern convenience and technology improving our lives, but then we just unimprove it. Like we're just such little self-hating primates that we just have to like fuck ourselves as much as possible.
Yeah, and you
see that in Harvest Moon. You're like, oh well, I've got a way easier day now, but I could make 10 times as much money now if I keep working the same amount of hours with my new, more efficient farming equipment.
Well, that's why when people get so afraid of, not to get too political, when people get afraid of like Bernie Sanders or something, like, oh, he's a Democratic socialist, and I'm like, well, hold on, we're a democratic social, we're a democratic republic with socialist principles. Like, for example, and this is why this is important, because the work day used to not have a cap on it. We used to work weekends. There's child labor laws. There's all kinds of things because of this scenario of like, well, put your head down, start doing things, and oh, look, you got a tool now. Well, great, now you can do more. And then there's no limit to the more that you're going to be expected to do. But instead, people were like, hey, these socialist people groups came up and developed unions and things and said, no, we're not going to do that crap. We need things to protect ourselves from ourselves, And so that's the same thing here. Like, I would play that game way too long, and I needed something to protect myself from myself, because so many people, you put your head down and then you go, and you pick your head up, and then I use the language a lot when I do therapy. I'm like, yeah, you feel like you're kind of in a rut then, right? Like, you're in the middle of this two mountains to get out. So it's almost easier just to keep doing what you're doing, because the struggle to get out is going to be even worse. Like, for whatever scenario, but same thing here.
So what do you think accounts for the success of this Stardew Valley game? Because from what I've seen, if I haven't played it, but it looks a lot like it just took all the best parts of Harvest Moon and then, took them up to 11. So added more customizable things, added more activities, more quests, more hidden secrets. But at its core, it's the same game. There's a courting system, there's a farming system, you're incrementally getting stronger. Is this just something that PC gamers hadn't been exposed to, that people who'd been raised on Super Nintendo and N64 had already discovered? Or like, are they going through their addiction cycle that we went through in college? Or what's going on?
And I think so. I think like you look at anything and it kind of goes through cycles. Like there's a new third wave feminism, third wave behaviorism, for example. It feels like everything puts on a fresh coat of paint and changes a couple things and then gets back at it. And this happens in games too. Like you look at racing games, there'll be a racing game that lives and then it slowly wanes, and then a new one comes up and waxes and then wanes. And same thing with shooters, for example. Before Call of Duty, it was Counter-Strike, Team Fortress 2, Team Fortress 1, and then it was, and so you get these, these waxing and waning, and same thing with MMOs. You get EverQuest, and then that goes down, and then There was another really big one
World
right
of Warcraft.
Yeah, there was one big one before that, I think, and then World of Warcraft, and then that one started dying off, and other people tried to jump on it, but that genre just died. But you get the idea. I kind of think that's what's happening here. Like people, I'd really like to ask people, have you played Harvest Moon? And for those people, it does make this is almost unfalsifiable because it makes sense that of course they would like this game too, but if they haven't, then it almost doesn't really answer the question because then they'll be like, oh yeah, I like it, and then you're like, well, that's because you didn't play Harvest Moon.
Right, it's a win-win.
Yeah,
but it's crazy. Like this, we covered last week how I think we covered this story where pirates were actually feeling bad for buying the game, for pirating the game, and then people who had bought the game legitimately were donating money to the creator of the game to pay for the pirates copy. So they were like paying for pirated versions of the game because they love this game so much. I've never seen so much goodwill come up around a game. Like they're just, the fan base is crazy, huge into it.
Yeah, that's nuts. I love these creative projects and these grassroots movements like that. It's fun. But yeah, I kind of wonder about that. I don't know. I feel like it's the new cycle of an old game. I wonder what it adds to it. I'll have to play it.
Yeah, I'm kind of afraid to though, because I remember like losing so many hours of my life to every Harvest Moon game I've played, and this one just seems like that, but with more things to do.
Yeah. Oh, I get bad with games. Like look at Here's the Storm, for example. Fuck me. When it first came out and I finally got alpha access, I just stopped everything. Like my whole day, everything. I started listening to podcasts. I read stuff about MOBAs because I'd never played one. Like I just became consumed with it for like 4 months, and I still play it every night before I go to bed. It's my wife's and I's tradition to play video games together. It's one of the ways we bond. And yeah, every night at least an hour. It's crazy.
Yeah. That's I was summer vacations coming up, and that's when I do my gaming goals. Like I'm going to beat Metroid Prime again. I'm going to, like right now I want to play Xenoblade Chronicles X, which is the largest game on the Wii U. Just enormous game. It takes 11 minutes just to beeline across the starting area if you don't fight anything.
Wow.
And it's a huge game. It's the size of Skyrim combined with like 3 other games put together. It's insane. And I know I can't do that during the work year, so I've got that summer vacation to kind of schedule things in. I think this would be a summer vacation game where I'm just gonna be like, all right, it's farming time for the next 2 months. No one disturb me.
Yeah, I know. I'm terrified of it too because there's games I'm still trying to get through, like Undertale. Started playing that.
Did you get working on your computer? I
did. Yeah. I got there's a GeForce update that came out, and I wonder if maybe that wasn't it, but now it works.
Good.
So yeah, good stuff. We'll talk about that later at some other time. But
yeah, let's do an Undertale episode maybe next week when you've had a chance to get through it, or just whenever we both finish it.
Yeah, let's do that. Speaking of which, next week actually, I don't know if we're going to record. Well, we definitely probably can't because I'm going to be on a trip, a snowboarding trip up to Colorado. We got a couple friends. You've heard of Colorado?
Yes, I've heard of it. It's a delightful little state.
Well, it snows there apparently, so you probably didn't know that. And there's a lot of snow when it does. And so there's a snowboarding resort called Steamboat Springs or something.
It's where my grandpa was born.
Really?
Yeah, random fact.
Oh, that's so weird. Anyway, yeah, so I'll be there. So I don't think we will record, will we?
You know what? I'll probably just do another one of our archive episodes, one of our early ones, just upload that.
Yeah, maybe do Castlevania.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That was one of my favorites. But anyway, cool. So any other thoughts on this?
No, we did get a lot of listener feedback, so maybe we should just move on to that.
All right, yeah, let's move into feedback. All right, this is the feedback section where we talk about our interaction with the community. So let's get into it, man.
We got 3 new emails this week to our thegametheorypodcast@gmail.com. First one's from Matthew. He says, hi guys, just listened to your podcast on the cognitive threshold and how it relates to gaming. I know this was recorded a few years ago, but I was wondering if you still had the information on the power analysis, the maths that go with that, and why that works. Many thanks, Matthew.
Oh, yeah, power analysis. Yeah, wow, people are really into that. That's so weird. Hold on, I'm downloading something. I'm going to check my iTunes reviews. Have you checked that yet? I haven't.
No, I still have to install iTunes in my new computer.
There we go. Okay, I paused it. Hope that didn't hiccup anything, the internet, with how it is in Mississippi. Yeah, people are so excited about that. Okay, yeah, there's something called G Plus. It's a not Google Plus. Hold on. It's a program where you can look up power analyses, and basically it's like this. The whole math behind it is it's pretty complex, but it determines. So let me see. I can't remember the exact question, but so I'll just talk about it in generalities. But so what it does is it looks at what. Let me think of this. Depending on the analysis you use, so one's called like an analysis of variance, which is called an ANOVA. I don't know how geeky to get into this. There's another one called multiple. Damn it! It started uploading. Stop, you piece of crap. don't download. Then there's a multivariate analysis of variance, a MANOVA, and depending on how many different ways you want to slice the data up, determine how many data points you need, right? Like for example, if you just say how many people are at the store, that's an addition technique, right? That's very easy to do. You just take all the data points, each person, and you add them, right? It doesn't matter. Power analysis, 1. You can have 1, because the question you're trying to answer is very simple. It's how many of these in total are there? But if you're saying something like how different are 2 groups, well, that depends on what kind of groups you're looking at, and more importantly, how similar they are. So if you say how different are American white people and Martians, there's going to be a lot of your data points on how different we are. Like here's a cluster of humans on the podcast. Sorry, imagine a cluster of humans in a small group, like a baseball size, right? That's the cluster of data points if you're looking at an XY graph. Well, then you've got an XY graph. This got to be boring for some people, but then you've got the other baseball size cluster is going to be very far from the humans in almost anything you measure, right? Like height, weight, whatever, right? You can almost visually just look at the graph, or you probably can in most cases, and realize, oh, those are the Martians. Those are the American white people, right? Well, just Americans, I'll say that. I was just trying to think of a small, tiny little group of people that are less varied, right? And so statistical analyses, all it does is imagine if they were very close. Like imagine Americans and well, we're pretty weird. Canadians, yeah. You'd see a lot of overlap, and so you need an analysis of variance to determine if they're different enough, right? And the way that you do that, so that question of the beginning of how different are they expected to be is one of the inputs you put into this power analysis. I don't know, how can this be interesting to people? Oh, okay, so the other part is that how many different ways are you trying to slice up these data? Because if you're looking at how would I put this? If you're asking a lot of questions, you need to take that into account whenever you look at your chances to get it wrong. So there's 2 different types of errors that you can make when you're looking at data. One is to say yes when the answer is no, like yes, they're different when it's no, and the other one is to say no when the answer is yes, right? Those are 2 different types of data or errors that you can make. You're in more. Okay, so the chance of saying yes when it's a no, on average, is something you have to agree on. But most people say about 0.05. So 5% of the time, 1 out of 20 times, you're going to get something that looks about the same, and it isn't. Looks different, but it isn't. It's actually just random chance that they look so different, right? And so you have to take that into account. That's another entry. But there's a lot of things in here. This has got to be boring, so I'll cut it off here. There's a lot of things that go into that question. You plug all these into a rather large algorithm, and it determines, okay, you're going to need this many different data points to reach that level, that P of 0.05, or if you're looking for a P of 0.02, it would be even more, right? So P of 0.05, you can use less. P of 0.02, you're going to need probably even more.
So depending on how accurate you want to be, there's the power analysis is telling you how many data points you need to get into your system before you can reach a level of accuracy.
And how different you expect them to be just on average, these 2 populations, or 2 samples, sorry. And then also, what kind of analysis are you doing? Those are the big inputs. There are other small things you're going to put in, but yeah, like how many different ways you're going to slice it and look at it. So, cool. Anyway, that can be interesting. I'm sorry. But all right, that's like the 4th time people have asked me to go over that, and so I'm doing it.
We start like a numinary podcast where we just do statistics.
Yeah.
Numbers.
I could. I don't even when I teach statistics, I feel bad for them. I'm just like, this can't. I'm sorry, guys. This does not. You don't care.
Well, thank you, Matthew, for your comment and question. Spencer emailed us saying, I started watching a while ago, can't remember when. The podcast is awesome. I've been able to watch from episode 50 before the earlier episodes weren't there anymore. iTunes is broken right now, so I can't leave a review, but 5 stars. I really like all the psychological stuff, though. Both you guys are great. Great job.
Oh, cool. Thanks, man. It's really nice of you. I appreciate it. Oh, yeah, speaking of iTunes reviews, we haven't gotten those in a while.
Right, because iTunes is broken, apparently.
Yeah, that sucks. I'm sorry. Yeah, what is the other thing we got? We got a tweet we were tweeted at. But that was our friend of the show, Sean Penrod. He was pointing some people there, just saying, hey, since your wife is so into video games, talking to someone named Tolarian College, I would recommend Game Theory Podcast. Their podcast combines deep thought and gaming. Another guy, David Farrell, who was asking about the math. He said, did anyone ask for the math in the other pod? Because I'd like to see the explanation if you blogged it or emailed it to someone, but don't go into too much trouble for me. That's a lot to ask, rather, if you happen to have it already written. Yeah, and if you want a better explanation, I'm not going to go into all that here, unless you guys just want a special episode where I really get into depth on it. You can just Google power analysis, and I think it'll be there. I mean, it's niche enough where I don't know if there'll be a Wikipedia for it, but I hope there will. And if not, there'll be someone explaining it in however much depth you want. You can skip forward or skip back or whatever you want to do.
I typed in power analysis into Google, and it predicted Penis Festival for my first thing. So
it's like, oh, David, I know what you're
I know what you're into. Japanese penis festivals, gotcha. We did get another email from Chess. He says, hey guys, Jeremiah wondered on the show why Felicia Day is so popular. I'm a moderate fan, so I thought I'd throw my 2 cents in. Remember, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, you asked about like what's the deal with Felicia Day?
Yeah.
So he says, first of all, I think that her work as a producer are crucial to understanding her. You may or may not find her funny or entertaining in what she does, but her contribution to gaming and all things nerd is hard to deny. Her web show, The Guild, from back in the day was groundbreaking. It was one of the first popular YouTube shows, helping pave the way for a new norm. Also about MMO players that basically ignored demographic as far as entertainment goes. It made a lot of waves for being self-produced on a shoestring budget. Starting there and continuing today, she has also been open about her psychological struggles and has included topics like depression and anxiety into her work. She's produced a lot of niche shows and helped them to find their audience. She co-created Tabletop with Will Wheaton, which has been huge for drawing people into board gaming. Critical Role is a Twitch show that has been similarly big for role-playing games. Personally, her humor is hit or miss with me, but I think she's earned the fame from her behind-the-scenes work and being a proponent for people, hobbies, and issues that don't get a fair shake. That's from Chess.
Okay, so because I realize she's done all those things, and I like those shows. Like Geek and Sundry and Tabletop. Is that what it's called?
The Will Wheaton's one? Yeah, Tabletop.
Yeah. And which is, a lot of times it's pretty funny.
I bought games from seeing Tabletop. I bought Legendary from seeing an episode. That and Sean Penrod recommended it. And then I bought a couple other games. I've seen them play it, and it looks fun.
I guess I was just wondering, and now I think I have some grasp, but I guess I was wondering, how is it that, there's a lot of people who make shows, but how is it that she became so big doing that? But it sounds like she just hit a niche market.
Well, I think what separates her from other YouTubers too was she started off as one of Joss Whedon's kind of like 12-person Rolodex of actors he uses. So she showed up in early Buffy, she showed up in Dr. Horrible. So she's showing up in these things that nerds kind of like anyway, Joss Whedon things. And that helps kind of like, oh, and she's a geek, and she's a gamer, and she's doing the stuff on YouTube. So it kind of spiraled into itself.
Yeah. Well, good for her. I think she's great. And she has that show where she plays games with her brother. What was that called again?
Co-optitude.
Is that what it is? Yeah, that one's...
It's pretty funny. It's like her and her brother. Her brother looks just like her. It's like the family resemblance is so strong. Yeah. But they're playing like Super Nintendo co-op games, and that game really makes me nostalgic for couch co-op. Like back in the day, just you and your buddy on a Super Nintendo playing a game together on the couch.
Man, we just did that with my family yesterday. We had gaming time. We did it again today for a little bit, but we had like 3 hours of just family gaming time on the Wii U. It's fun, man. There's nothing quite like laughing and stuff, and having a good time.
Yeah, I think I'm the same way with Chess. Like her humor is really hit or miss for me. Like I don't really find her that funny, but I do appreciate that she's bringing a lot of light onto hobbies that don't get much play. Yeah.
Last thing for me, at least, on our episode 24, Mega Man, that came out. These things, by the way, we still get views on the early ones because people watch something, and I think they like one of our shows, and then they go back and look at a couple of the episodes. So I'll get little updates that say, oh, you have 5 more watches on one of your super old ones. So Mega Man was one of the episodes we did, episode 24, and a guy named Mr. Wardanis came on, and he corrected us, which I think is actually pretty cool. He said Mega Man is a robot. Mega Man X is a Reploid, which is a sentient robot.
Oh,
So that's the difference.
That's true. Reploids, and then the Mavericks. I can never keep track of Capcom storylines. It's like Resident Evil kind of stuff. I can never quite get the details.
Yeah, but it sounds like Mr. Wardonis can. So yeah, thanks for that contribution. I'm sure there was plenty of hardcore Mega Man fans who were trying to tear their earbuds out when they heard that.
It's a Reploid. He's not a droid.
So, yep, that's it for me, man.
We had one comment. We had a lot of stuff going on the Facebook thing, but somebody was talking about. Oh yeah, Patrick. He brought up a D&D campaign based on Xenoblade. I said that kind of offhandedly when I was reviewing the game with you.
Yeah.
He says, if you do it, please consider recording and posting it as a special podcast. I love that game. 100% it twice. Wow. Okay.
Wow.
To give you some context, I played that game for like 130 hours, and I didn't 100% it. I got close, but I didn't 100%. I left a lot of the end game quests undone. He says he's playing X now, which is the Wii U one. I would love to listen to a campaign based on it. I like the old Star Wars episodes that you did in that way, and wish there was more of that kind of bonus episode. Great podcast. As always, keep at it. And with some other people like weighed in, they said they liked the D&D, and they were sad that the Star Wars campaign didn't get finished. Yeah, those live plays, Jeremiah, they're always huge, but they take so long to edit. I think I was overambitious with the Star Wars one because I was adding in sound effects and stuff. Maybe if we just gave it more of a raw feed.
Sure, man, I'll do it. You can see the genius that is our DMing group. I'm just kidding. I think what's cool about our DMing group or our gaming group is that everyone brings something different to the table. I think that's common in most gaming groups, but especially so in ours. Everybody's good at different things. So
yeah, the only thing that sucks about our gaming group, and I think this is for most gaming groups, is it's just hard to get together and play. Like it's hard to find a time that works for everybody.
Yeah, and we don't live together. Like if we lived anywhere near each other, there's something about. We've already talked about this, about getting together in a place, a sacred place, and you all, there's nothing else going on. You set your phones down, fucking sit down and play some video games or whatever, or RPGs. Mm-hmm. And that there's nothing quite like that because you dedicated your time. It's sort of a contract, a social contract you have with everyone else sitting there.
Right.
But whenever you're playing online, like, you see someone looking at their other monitor or whatever, or like all playing on their phone, and you're like, see, if we were here, you could be like, hey, don't do that. I see what you're doing.
Well, if wishes were horses, we'd all be eating steak right now. So we just got to make it work, to quote Jane.
Quote who?
Jane from Firefly.
Yeah.
If wishes were horses, we'd all be eating steak right now. Like everyone does the what the fuck face that John sometimes do. But yeah, good. Thanks for the feedback. We almost played last night, but it kind of fell through. But we do want to get some more D&D going. We'll try and record it so we can release some of our live play things, because this is not just a video game show. We do role-playing games as well, as last episode proved.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I think that's it for the episode then. Thanks for tuning in. And if you do want to leave feedback, you can send it to thegametheorypodcast@gmail.com, or you can join the Facebook page where we have a lot of activity, facebook.com/groups/gametheorypodcast, or you can follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/gametheorypod. And
tons of options. So next week we will be out of commission, but I'll put up the Castlevania episode, which is one of Jeremiah's probably top 3.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks, where hopefully we will have had a chance to play Undertale and give a proper episode.
Yeah, that would be great. I do want to finish that game. It's been weird so far, but
how long have you been playing it? Like how far in?
Probably like 20 minutes or something, 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
I finally got it to work.
Kind of in that tutorial kind of level stage?
Yes. I just got out of the ruins, and where am I? Anyway.
Are you walking the path of the true pacifist, or are you just murdering your way through?
I'm doing pacifist so far, because everyone seems to say I want to do it the pacifist way and see what happens.
Yeah, apparently that's the best way to start. So that's what I'm doing too. Just going straight up peaceful resolutions, man.
That's what it's
I'm
all
Gandhi,
about.
but not the civilization Gandhi.
Yeah, because he would straight up nuke you. All right. Well, great. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you next week on the Game Theory Podcast.